welcome to the third part of this Hexagon pullover sweater tutorial. And if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, go watch those first. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to seam up our shoulder seam. So we're going to attach our yarn to the corners of both pieces. And we're just going to tie a knot. And you want to make sure your cardigan is flipped inside out because you don't want this part to be showing on the right side. So right now I'm working on the wrong side. Okay, so after we tie our knot, we're going to insert our hook and pull up our yarn and then chain 1. And we're going to be slip stitching all the way across, and we're going to put 1 stitch into every single stitch, and this is going to seam up our shoulder seam. And you want to make sure you're not doing this part too tight. So you're going to do this all the way down, and once we get to the end, I'm actually not going to go all the way to the end, and we're going to do that because you have to leave a space big enough so we can put our heads and take it on and off. But we're going to do this all the way down, and we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Okay, so you can see what the seam looks like, and as you can see, I didn't go all the way down, and so I'm going to tie it off by chaining 2 and leaving a tail to weave in at the end. And you may have to leave a little bit more than I do, but just make sure the sweaters can comfortably come on and off of your head. So that's why I didn't go all the way to the end. But you're going to repeat the same exact thing on the other side. So now you're going to flip your sweater back on the right side, and now we're going to work on our sleeves. So you can do your sleeves 1 or 2 ways. So you can keep it the width that it is, or you can make it more of a tapered look, and then that's how I did mine. So I'm going to show you how you do that. So you're going to attach your yarn, tie a knot like normal. We're going to use our 4mm hook and insert our hook, pull up a loop, chain 3, and that's going to count as your first double crochet. And then we're going to put 2 more double crochets into that same stitch. So we're going to continue this granny stitch pattern, and then we're going to chain 1 in between the clusters, and then we're going to skip 2 stitches, and then we're going to go into that 3rd stitch, and then we're going to put 3 double crochets all into that same stitch. And we're just going to continue this all the way around our sleeve. And actually for the first round, I didn't do any decreases. And if you notice at the end of the round, you don't have enough stitches, feel free to skip more than 2 stitches to make it work, and you won't notice a difference. So I'm coming up on the last cluster, so I'm going to chain 1 and then skip. I have like 4 stitches left, but I skipped 2 like normal, and then I just work the last 3 double crochets, and then I have an extra stitch, but I'm just going to chain 1 like normal, skip it, and then finish the round off by slip stitching into that first double crochet we made at the beginning. So this is a part where you can decide if you want to keep the width of this sleeve how it is now, or you can decide if you want to have a more tapered and fitted look. That's totally up to you. And if you want that tapered look, you're basically putting in decreases. So I'm going to show you how to do that in this round, and mine is completely random, and yours, you'll see how it works up when you do yours, and you can decide if you want to add in more or less decreases. There's no wrong or right way on how to do this part. Moving on to the next round, we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to turn our work. And then we're just going to continue the pattern like normal by putting 2 more double crochets into that chain 1 space that we made from the previous round. And that is your first cluster. And then we're going to chain 1 and then continue the pattern until I get to the part where I want to put a decrease. And I will say that you need to keep track of how many decreases you do on which rounds, because you want your other sleeve to be identical to this one. So just take notes and try to mimic the same thing on the other sleeve. So now I'm going to do my first decrease. So I'm going to show you how to decrease, and then you can decide on whether or not you want to put decreases on yours. So we're going to yarn over like normal, and then we're going to insert our hook, pull up a loop. We're going to finish off this first double crochet like normal. Then we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that same space, pull up a loop. We should have 2 loops on our hook now, and we're not going to complete it. So we're going to yarn over again, go into that next space, pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2. We should have 3 loops on our hook, and then pull through all 3. And then to complete this decrease, we're just going to put 1 normal double crochet into that same space. And yeah, that's how you do your decrease. You might have to rewatch this part a couple times just to get the hang of it, but I'm going to continue like normal by chaining 1, and then we're going to continue our cluster of double crochets until I want to do more decreases. But I'm going to show you where to work in this next space for the next round. So you're going to work in that space right there like normal. You can either put another decrease on the next round or a normal cluster, but that will be the space that you will have to work in. So on both of my sleeves, on row 1, we did no decreases. On row 2, I did 1 decrease. And then on row 3 through 6, I did 2 decreases per round. So you can do more or less depending on how fitted you want your sleeve to be, or you don't have to do any decreases at all and just crochet in the rounds. So I'm ending off my second round by doing my last cluster, and for this round I did 2 decreases, and you just end the round off the same way, chaining 1 and then slip stitching to the top of that first chain 3 we made at the beginning. So moving on to round 3, I'm just going to chain 3, and don't forget to turn your work, because this is going to help hide that line of demarcation. And then you're just going to continue the pattern like normal. And for the rest of my rounds, I just did 2 decreases randomly. It doesn't have to be in the same spot. You can just put them in randomly. So I recommend after completing each round, check and see if you want your sleeve to be tighter. And if so, then just keep doing decreases. And then if not, just crochet like normal. And if you're choosing to have a bigger sleeve, or if you reach your desired length using the taper method, I'm going to show you in a few on how you can do decreases so it can be more fitted around your wrist. And so we'll be able to attach the ribbing to that as well. So after you reach your desired length, now it's time to tighten our wrist. And we're going to do that by adding decreases. You may or may not have to do this part, but you're going to chain 2. And then we're just going to put decreases using single crochet. So you're going to insert your hook, pull up a loop, and then go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull through all 3. And then you're going to move on to the next stitch and repeat this pattern all the way around until your wrist can comfortably go in and out of that hole. And you don't want to make it too tight. So once you reach all the way back to the beginning, you're just going to slip stitch into that first stitch where we started, and you can test and see if your hand can comfortably slide in and out of that hole. And if it's still too big, you can just do another round, but I actually ended up taking mine out because I didn't need to put any more decreases on mine, but you might have to do more or less on yours. But to end off this round, you're just going to chain 2 and then leave a tail to weave in at the end. Okay, so now we're going to move on and work on our cuffs. So I'm using a 4mm hook, and I'm going to chain 10, and whatever amount that you chain, that's going to be the thickness of your ribbing, your cuffs for your sleeves. So I chained 10, and without skipping any stitches, I'm going to put 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way down. Okay, so this is what the first row should look like, and once you get to the end of the row, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work, and we're going to go in the back loops only, and I'm going to put half double crochets all the way down. But once you get to the end of this row, you're actually going to go through both loops. So this is actually going to be the pattern for this entire ribbing, and you're just going to repeat this until you reach the length of your arm cuffs. And when you're making the cuffs, you want to make sure you can wrap it around your wrist and comfortably slide your hand in and out of that. So that's how you know you made it long enough, or if you made it too big, because you don't want it to slip on and off easily, but you also don't want it to be too tight to where it's hard to come on and off of your wrist. And once you do reach your desired length, you want to make sure you leave a long enough tail, because we're going to use that to weave and attach our arm cuffs to our sleeves. So this is a pattern for the arm cuffs, so you want to keep track of how many rows you do, because you're going to have to repeat this for your other arm cuff. Okay, so now we're ready to attach our ribbing. So you want to flip your arm sleeve inside out. So you're going to be working on the wrong side, and we're going to take that long tail that we left on our ribbing, and then we're going to weave it in using our needle. And we're basically going to just be, I guess it's called the whip stitch, but we're going to be sewing our ribbing to our sleeve using our needle. So you're going to go in one of the stitches and then you're going to pull it all the way through, and you're basically just going to do this all the way around. But you may have to go in certain stitches more than once just so you can make sure the ribbon wraps all the way around the wrist area and basically line up and meet its way back into the beginning of where we started. Okay, as you can see, I'm coming up on the last few stitches, and once you do come back all the way back to the beginning, we're going to remove our darning needle and we're going to replace it with our hook, and we're going to go into that first stitch at the bottom and line it up with the other side of the ribbing, and we're just going to pull through and slip stitch, or you can single crochet all the way across to close up this the ribbing. So once you slip stitch all the way across, I'm going to chain 2 and pull through the yarn and leave a tail to weave in at the end. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side of our ribbing. So this is how the cuffs look after you flip your sweater back on the right side, and yeah, I think it looks good. This is my preferred method on how to attach any ribbing. I think it's the easiest way. So now we're ready to add our border to the bottom of our sweater. So we're going to add this border first, and then we're going to attach our ribbing after. So you're going to pick any stitch and tie a knot to attach our new yarn. So after we attach our yarn, we're going to go in that same stitch and pull through the loop, chain 1, and then we're going to put 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. Okay, so we're coming up on the other gray border that we attached earlier, and when you get to that part, you just gotta basically find a space where you can put a few stitches in, so nothing special, and then just keep crocheting like normal all the way around. Okay, so we made it back to the beginning. So to end off this round, we're gonna slip stitch into that first single crochet, and then we're gonna chain 2 to tie off. So now it's time to add the bottom part of our ribbing. So this is the same pattern that we use with the cuff, but this time this part is longer. Mine is 34 inches, and to calculate how long you should do yours, basically measure the part of your body on where you want your cuff to sit at, or the ribbing to sit at. So after you got your desired length, it's time to connect the ribbing together. So we're gonna join both ends, and we're gonna slip stitch all the way across to seam up our ribbing. Okay, so we're coming up on our last stitch, and we're not going to end off this and tie it off, but we are going to chain 1 and leave a long enough tail to be able to attach our ribbing to our sweater. So make sure you leave a really long tail. And when we attach this ribbing, you want to make sure the ribbing's inside out as well as the sweater. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain this part the best that I can, and if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. So when we look at our ribbing, it's a lot smaller than the width of our sweater. So what we're gonna do is basically decrease, but not really decrease. Well, the way we're gonna decrease is by going in the stitches on our ribbing more than once. So we're basically gonna break our ribbing into quadrants. So I'm gonna put stitch markers on the sides, and then put a stitch marker where I begin, and then directly behind that as well. And doing this, we want to make sure that for each quadrant that we fit all the stitches that's on the sweater and attach that to all the stitches and the ribbing. And if this sounds confusing, keep watching because you'll probably pick up on it as I show you. Okay, so first we're gonna still use our 4mm hook, and we're gonna attach our ribbing using the long tail that we left, and we're going to pull through that first stitch, and we're going to attach it with single crochets. I found out that if we use a slip stitch, it'll be way too tight, but single crochets have more of a stretch, so I wouldn't recommend attaching it using slip stitches. But I'm gonna do this all the way down, and you'll see where I add the stitch markers just to keep myself organized. But I'm just going in each stitch so far, and you'll see me when I start to go into some of the same stitches in the ribbing. As you can see right here, I'm going in that same stitch just so I can lessen the stitches from the sweater. All right, so now I'm gonna attach our stitch markers just to make sure the ribbing is being attached evenly all around the sweater. So I'm going to line up that side of the ribbing along with the side of the sweater. And you see all the stitches that's in between the stitch marker and the ribbing. We want all those stitches to fit on that particular part of our ribbing. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And now I can adjust like how many stitches I need to go in to reach that stitch marker, and while keeping it, centered and even. But I'm gonna keep working these stitches. There's no wrong or right way. And like I said earlier, because there's more stitches on the sweater than the ribbing, I'm gonna have to go in the same stitch on the sweater more than 1 or 2 times, just so it can line up at the end. Because if I didn't do that, then I would have more stitches on the sweater than I have on the ribbing, and the ribbing would technically be too small for the sweater. So I hope this is making sense. But I'm just going to continue this all the way around, and whenever you have a stitch marker, you want to make sure by the time you reach the stitch marker, the ribbing and where you have the stitch marker attached should all be attached together. And be sure to check your work on the other side and make sure you don't have any spaces or gaps, so that way you can take out some stitches and fix it. As you can see, after working a few stitches and going through the same stitch in that gray ribbing, the sweater and the ribbing is actually starting to line up. So that's why it's important to, put the stitch markers and make sure it's staying even. So now we're getting close to our stitch marker, and this is what I mean. So before we started off with the sweater being extremely too big, and now they ended up matching together, and that's because we went through, you know, the gray ribbing more than once to make the sweater fit that particular section. So we're just going to keep repeating this. So now you see the red stitch marker. You're going to repeat the same thing and go into the gray ribbing more than once so you can decrease the amount of stitches on our sweater so it can line up once we reach that stitch marker. So by the time you make it back all the way around the sweater, you should only have a little bit left to work, and it should line up pretty easily. So once you do get to the end and reach back to the beginning, you're just gonna pick a stitch and slip stitch it, and then chain 2 like normal, and then leave a tail to weave in at the end, and then that's the completed sweater minus weaving in the ends. Okay, so this is what it should be looking like, and yeah, wasn't too bad. I hope I explained it good, but I'm going to fasten off by chaining 2. And yeah, if you completed this sweater, be sure to tag me on Instagram, and I would love to see how yours turned out. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.